Welcome. My name is Corinne Waldo. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Boulder Chamber. I want to welcome you today to our new combined food service, grocery, hospitality, and events session, talking about how to safely reopen within your industries. I want to thank all the local economic development and chambers for continually helping their business to reopen in a safe capacity and to directing people to these webinars in order to ask your questions, provide you information, and allow you to offer some feedback. I will be asking you some questions today in the form of polls later in the discussion. But if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A feature or the chat if that's more accessible to you. At this time, I'm going to hand it off to Jesse Rounds of Boulder County Public Health.
Thanks, Corinne. So today we're just going to do a very quick update on Safer at Home and then get into some resources. But really we're focusing on updates and changes to the specific fields and trying to maximize time for a question and answer period. So just a quick review of the timeline and really the last couple, the last week. At the beginning of last week, short-term rentals were permitted. And then on June 3rd, the state took feedback on rules surrounding houses of worship, outdoor recreation, and personal services. They made those changes on June 4th in the 5th update, and then on June 6th in the 6th update, they clarified a bunch of details, which I think will come up today for us. So just a little bit about the long-term outlook. Safer at Home is here to stay for months, but it will evolve. As you've seen in the last week and as you've seen over the last month, Safer at Home has changed as CDPHE and the counties have become more comfortable with how to open up safely. But we will not be back to a new normal or a normal situation until there's a vaccine or treatment, a successful treatment. Just quickly, the reasons for that are COVID-19 is still just as contagious as it was. We really want you to stay at home as much as possible. That's probably the best way to stay safe. One thing that we keep hammering in this is that the guidelines from the state, compliance with those guidelines is obligatory. For you to be able to open, you need to follow those guidelines. And if you have questions about your specific situation, about how maybe something you're doing might be like something that's required in the order, contact an attorney. They are the best source of information for details. Face coverings, we as the county have extended our face covering order into the future. The phrase that's been bandied about is when in doubt, bring it out. When you're going outside, you have no idea whether you're going to be able to maintain 6 feet of distance easily. So it's always a good idea to wear a face covering. The Chamber and Boulder County put out these great posters, which are linked to here for employees and patrons that provide a guide in each jurisdiction for when you need to wear a mask. And then the county just put out, I believe yesterday it was posted, a new script. And the point of these scripts is not to tell you how to deal with customers. It's just a helpful way that we're envisioning people having to address the question of, hey, a customer walks in, they are not wearing a mask, trying to figure out why are they not wearing a mask? Is there anything we can do about that? This script really breaks down a friendly way of doing that and offers alternatives. One of the things that the most recent clarification from the governor's office sort of outlined was that you can use alternative ways of providing services to people to avoid conflicts over face coverings. For example, using curbside delivery or online ordering, that sort of thing, ways to eliminate the need for people who don't want to wear masks or can't for medical or physical reasons can't wear a mask or a face covering, can still obtain services from your business.
All right, with that.
Thanks, Zach. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. This is Zach Lustgarten, Boulder County Public Health. I work in the Food Safety Division, and I'm going to do my best today to condense my normal 45-minute presentation down into about 10. So luckily, nothing has really changed on the food services front. Today, we're going to focus solely on restaurants, as grocery stores have kind of been in this situation since the beginning. Nothing has changed on their end. So we're going to focus today on restaurants. So the big thing that we keep coming across and a lot of questions arise on are that dine-in service looks like this. We'll break it down into indoor and outdoor. So for indoor, facilities are held to 50% of their posted occupancy limit or 50 patrons, whichever is fewer. It doesn't matter if you're, at this point, if your restaurant can seat 400, you are limited to 50 in that circumstance, okay? So it is unfortunate, but we're gonna talk a little bit at the end of the presentation about a Boulder-wide variance that is getting some traction. So I know a lot of businesses have that, that concern that they're nowhere near their 50% occupancy because they're just larger facilities. So we'll talk a little bit more about the variance procedure and what that's going to look like at the end of the presentation. But so for indoor dine-in service, we're looking at 50% or 50 patrons, whichever comes first. As always, 6 feet distance between tables and parties. Employees must wear masks. So this is something that I get the most complaints on across the board, whether it be grocery stores or food service restaurants. Folks think that it's just the front-facing, customer-facing staff. It is not. The order does state that all essential employees should be wearing masks, and that's actually goes back to the state order from, I think it's Public Health Order 2026. So other items to consider in indoor dining, you want to ensure maximum ventilation by opening windows, minimizing your air conditioning, and then disinfecting and deep cleaning of all shared spaces and between parties. Want to keep parties together and not allow them to mingle. Really what we're looking at here with dine-in service is that it is sit down only and it is not intermingling of tables. Outdoor dine-in service, that's what's really being encouraged from the governor's office. Getting creative with your local municipalities to extend that seating. There is not a limit on seating capacity outdoors, but you do have to kind of consider and require that there are 6 feet of distance between tables and different parties. All employees still have to wear masks, and you're still disinfecting and deep cleaning those shared spaces between seatings. General food service requirements are that party sizes have to be 8 or fewer, and you want to reduce congregating inside and outside. What that looks like is you're encouraging reservations. Waiting parties should not be congregating at entry and exit points. Really, you want to have them in the outdoor spaces, even in their car with like a text alert when their table is ready. If you have communal seating situations like long tables, you would have to address that concern so that there are 6 feet of distance between different parties. Self-service stations and buffets, that would have to be there would not be a self-service situation. A buffet would have to be addressed by having your staff actually distribute that food. There would be no seat yourself service. Even in fast casual, you have to have some type of way to ensure that tables are being cleaned, sanitized between use. And so if If you're doing seat yourself, that's nearly impossible. Another really big point of contention that we have here is that folks may not sit at the bar at this time if that bar is being used to prepare food or drink. So if you have a bartender behind a bar, it is nearly impossible to allow folks to sit there without contaminating that space, putting that employee at risk, but also putting the drinks at risk that are open, that are going to be going out to tables. Other items to consider: floor markings. Those are going to create proper distancing and flow of traffic. Those should be located at any place that you have a line. It's either the restroom or the checkout stations. And then you want to clearly mark closed tables that are not available for seating customers. Signage, as always, what we're looking at there is just posting signage on your door to not enter if you are ill, and then just hygiene and sanitation expectations as well. Cleaning and disinfection protocols should be publicly posted using like cleaning logs. And if you have menus that are multi-use menus, I should say, you want to really move to single-use menus or menu boards, or even online menus where folks scan it with their smartphone, a barcode, and it goes to your online menu. Providing single service or single serving condiments. You want to move away from those condiments that sit on the table all day. Disinfecting your restrooms every hour and blocking off stalls and urinals with proper signage to support that 6-foot distancing. So it might mean that you're going to lose a couple urinals, but it's important that the social distancing takes place throughout the restaurant and in the restrooms included. Providing hand sanitizer at check-in areas as well. I'm going to start moving a little bit quicker now. If you have dart boards, pool tables, shuffleboard, arcades, things like that, those cannot be open during this stage of Safer at Home. Those items are just impossible to clean and disinfect between parties, and so those things should be discontinued at this time. Just like I said with the salt and pepper shakers, you know, like those condiments that stay on tables. Tablecloths, you really want to move away from those unless you are bringing them out to each customer and then taking them back immediately so that they're not sitting on tables throughout the day, becoming sources of contamination. Some focus on employees here for food service. There should be temperature monitoring and symptom screening at this point. I've got some links here to the CDPHE symptom tracker. Appointing 1 employee per shift to monitor staff and the public so that they're adhering to these safety measures. It's important that that you have this person in place. Like I said, that fast casual situation. If you didn't have this person kind of seating folks and making sure that your staff is kind of following all these guidelines, then things could get out of control pretty quickly. Employees, if they are sick, they should obviously stay home. We'll talk a little bit more at the end of the presentation about what returning to work looks like and outbreak procedures. Obviously, employees will want to stay at 6 feet apart at all times. And that can be done through workflows, shift cohorting, staggering of shifts, shift changes. So making sure that folks aren't congregating in one spot at a time. All staff, like I said, are required to wear face coverings at all times. And this includes all the vendors that enter your building. So if you have a Cisco delivery that comes in 3 times a day, you have to make sure that those folks also are wearing their masks. Gloves should be worn for those forward-facing folks, customer-facing folks, but gloves, it's important that, remember, this is just food code stuff. So you should be wearing gloves with ready-to-eat foods, and then obviously washing your hands. At this time, it's every 30 minutes is what those requirements say, but also when you enter and exit the building and the kitchen. Again, like I said, we're just following the retail food regs. So don't work when you're sick, frequent hand washing, changing gloves between tasks when you're going raw to ready to eat. And then simplifying the menu is going to help you keep only the most vital folks in the kitchen so that you're not congregating. If you have the ability to provide high quality face coverings for employees, please do. That's going to go a long way in preventing complaints and make sure that your folks are trained up on like how to wear the mask. A lot of complaints come into this office about employees have a mask, it's around their neck and it doesn't go over their nose or mouth. And I realize that wearing a mask for 8+ hours is not easy. I talked to a lot of folks in healthcare and they're doing the same thing. So I know it's not easy, but please, it is important, and it's gonna also build that customer confidence. If folks come into your restaurant and they see that you're not wearing masks, it's an automatic red flag for those customers. And that's the biggest thing right now, is just building confidence, because we're in an interesting time. Just some things to think about for customers. There should be an option for customers to sign in, and that is all about exposure potential. So if we need to do contact tracing, that's going to allow the epidemiology folks to trace back who was exposed to a possible COVID positive customer or employee. I touched on technology solutions, but you should look into those for mobile ordering and menus, text on arrival, things like that. And then payment options, you know, like where you're preventing exchanges of money. So less handling of money, the better. Other quick things, establish waiting areas outdoors preferred. That would just mean, you know, we're just trying to keep folks apart as much as possible. So if you're not clear about where they should be, chances are they're going to jumble up in the front. I already touched on this, but it's sit down only, no standing or congregating, in a bar area. That seems to be the spot. If you are doing curbside and it's working, continue. It's a great option. We're gonna always encourage that during this time. And then the big one, requesting facial coverings to be worn by customers when not eating or drinking. So when they're waiting for a table, and when they're coming in, passing other tables, and not eating or drinking, they should have masks on. And we're to the point now where these mask orders have been in place for quite a while. And folks, if they're not going to follow these requirements, you should really consider refusing service and using your law enforcement as a tool in those situations. If you do have folks that come in that they're unable to adhere to hygiene and social distancing requirements, offer them options like takeout. One quick Q&A that I've gotten a lot of questions from bars specifically about, can they open? And the question is, or the answer is, no. However, if they team up with a retail food establishment, they may open. So we're to this next phase where the governor has stated that bars, taverns, brew tubs, breweries, microbreweries, distillery pubs, wineries, tasting rooms may reopen if they provide food from a retail food establishment. This does not mean that you get a frozen dinner from Costco or bags of chips from Costco and you offer those. You have to team up with a retail food establishment. Some people have said food trucks, great option, great option. It might be a neighboring restaurant, great, those work. However, a bar still has to meet all the requirements that we've talked about here for a restaurant. So just because you're offering food doesn't give you the ability to have 100+ folks elbow to elbow in your bar, right? So you still have to meet all the requirements around social distancing and everything that we've talked about so far. And with that, I will pass it on to John.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Holste. I'm the Special Events Coordinator at Boulder County. I'm going to quickly talk about some short-term rentals before diving a little bit more into hospitality and events. I'll quickly here go through some of the short-term rental guidance from CDPHE. I'm not going to read it all just because it's on your screen, but the basics are that owners are responsible for ensuring the property is clean and sanitized before between guests and need to provide products for guests to clean with. It's suggested to remove shared soft objects that are difficult to clean if it's possible. Same with avoiding scheduling back-to-back stays if possible to ensure proper time for cleaning and disinfecting the property. Having no contact check-in, or at the very minimum, maintaining that 6 feet of social distance, wearing a mask with any interactions with staff, guests, etc. And then encouraging a flexible cancellation policy in case anyone does experience symptoms of COVID that they are able to cancel. And then, of course, informing guests of the face covering order that's still in effect here in Boulder County. And here are some additional links. That top one is going to have a little bit more expanding on what that last slide said. And the second one is the direction of the CDC. All right, so some FAQs. I'm going to go through these real quickly. So bear with me just a second. So do all guests need to wear masks when they enter the hotel or in public areas? Yes. If you can't maintain social distancing, you need to wear a mask. Can you have self-service coffee, water stations, etc.? Zach touched on this a little bit earlier in the food presentation with buffets, that buffets wouldn't be able to operate in their traditional format. You'd need to have staff serving that. You can't just have a buffet like you typically would. And self-service coffee and water stations are discouraged. Just, you know, not something we want to have right now. Gatherings of 10 or more people not allowed still under this latest safer at home order. I'm going to come back to that here in a second. But with number 4 here, we have gotten a lot of variance requests from a wide variety of people: caterers, event venue managers, etc. Boulder County is looking into a variance right now. I don't really have much more than that, other than we know that there are some inconsistencies in the state order. We've seen a lot of feedback behind that, and so we are putting together a variance request. The opportunity to give feedback for that has not been defined at this time, but as soon as it has, we will get that out to everybody so that you have a chance to provide feedback and direct that variance request. Weddings. Okay, so this is a big one. I'm going to spend a little time here and do my best to go over this. So on Friday's Safer at Home order, in with the places of worship guidance, the state gave guidance on what they call life rite events. So this is a wedding, a baptism, a bat mitzvah, anything like that you could think of, religious or not, doesn't really matter, but that guidance is found in the worship guidance on the state's website. And I'm not sure that I put a link in here, but I will see if I can get that in here or send that out another way. And what that guidance says is that indoors, that life rite ceremony is limited to 50 people or 50% of the venue's capacity, whichever is smaller of the two. And then for outdoors, it says that individuals must maintain 6 feet distancing between non-household members and work with the appropriate local authority to obtain approval for the maximum number of individuals. So I want to be very clear, we don't have that exact number right now, and we're working on a calculator or an easy system for everybody to say, okay, I have this square footage outdoors, how many guests can I have, rather than being able to answer everybody's individual inquiries. But at this time, I don't have that information. So again, that's something that I see that we'll have guidance on later in the week. This special events guidance that you see the link for right now, that will have some updates, but I imagine for the life rite ceremonies, we will produce a new document just for that, because I know there's an extreme interest, especially in the wedding sector, but you know, for other life rite ceremonies as well. We will likely have some new guidance on that shortly. I don't have an exact timeline, unfortunately, but it's something that's very high on my radar. But another thing I want to be very clear on with the weddings, this applies to the life rite ceremony only. It does not apply to any associated reception or party. Those receptions and parties are still limited to 10 people under this later safe at home order. So the wedding ceremony could have those larger numbers that I just spoke about, but the receptions, parties, anything like that for any life right ceremony is still limited to 10 persons. So here's some, sorry.
I can jump in if you want, John.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. So just quickly, these are the resources. We've shared these a number of times, but we really want to sort of drive home that your fastest source of information, your best source of information are our websites. The first one is Boulder County's website. We've been making some changes to try and make it a little bit more user-friendly and to really get you to the information you need. The covid19.colorado.gov is likewise, it's the fastest way to get the information that the state is changing. They put the order up there, and then they actually have interpretation of the order by sector on that website. EnergizeColorado.com is a source for materials, masks, disinfecting, cleaning supplies, that sort of stuff. And then these other sources, chambers of commerce, have been super helpful getting information out and organizing things like this. We really encourage you also to look to industry associations for your specific industry. They can provide guidance on sort of national trends, as well as access to solutions that maybe your industry, others in your industry have hit on as ways to move forward in these conditions. And then if you are in a municipality, municipalities can have their own specific guidance, specifically related to masks and things like that, that it's very worth checking in on. And yeah, just again, spotlighting these two resources. Go ahead, sorry. And Outbreaks, if you have 2 or more employees with confirmed or suspected COVID-19 within a 14-day period, that is an outbreak, and it needs to be reported to our epidemiological team at Boulder County Public Health. They will reach out to the employees and work with them to protect those employees and the health of those employees. We will reach out, our team, someone from our team will reach out to a business that's been impacted by that to work through making sure that that business is following all of the regulations and is aware that employees that do test positive can't come back into the office or can't come back to business until they're through the illness. There's been some question about this checklist that's referenced here, the outbreak report. If you have 2 or more employees, we're going to need you to fill out that form. And I think the other big message here is that outbreaks are not necessarily going to shut down your business. The epidemiological team and your business liaison team are going to work with you to try and figure out a way to stay open to at some level, or maybe you'll be able to stay open with no changes. It's really just, we need to be able to track what's happening at the business where someone became sick. So it's not a death sentence, I guess, for the business. And variances, John and Zach discussed this, and I think it's really important that we hit on it again. We are exploring the best way to pursue a variance or variances. We are going to be reaching out to businesses, probably with online forms, to try and get feedback from you about what the best way to move forward with the variance is. We're actively pursuing this, and we recognize that many businesses have been contacting us individually and contacting group email addresses, trying to get information. And I just want to reiterate that we really are we're hearing you, and we're hoping to get something together quickly, and we're going to be relying on your help to do that. And now, before we get to Q&A, I just want to reiterate that These are going to be ongoing office hour sessions. They may morph over time as we get different sorts of questions and we focus more on your questions and addressing your concerns. But Tuesdays, the big day, we're grouping these industries, but we're hoping to have enough time for everyone during these group sessions. And then on Thursday, we have a general session where it'll just be me, and I'm hoping to answer questions as they come in. And really important, Wednesdays at 6 p.m., the Latino Chamber is partnering with the Boulder Chamber and Boulder Public Health to do a Spanish session. This is a catch-all. All the industries can be there, and we really encourage you to attend that and hope that that can provide some useful information as well. And the link at the bottom is your link to all of these sessions. Sorry, Zach.
Jesse, can I interject real quick on the Spanish session?
Yep.
So their topics change each week, but we do have recordings that I send out in the emails of both the general session from May 6th and the restaurant-specific section from May 27th that I will continue to send out. And it's a great tool if you have Spanish-speaking employees or vendors or anybody that you want to help them understand the requirements. We have specific recordings of those as well, so you don't have to attend those live, and I will continue to send those out.
Thanks, Corinne. And then if you have questions, if you have concerns, you can email us at covidbiz@bouldercounty.org or call the hotline. If you email us, we parcel those out to the specific business liaison, and we try to get to those as quickly as possible. Same with the call centers. The call center has been more focused for residents with concerns and complaints, but either is a great way to get in touch with us. And now I think we're open for Q&A.
All right, so Zach, this one's for you. Can you talk a little bit about soda machines? So we talked about self-service ice and coffee. What are the recommendations on soda machines? Are there any requirements to discontinue use?
Yeah, so unfortunately that would fall under the same requirements as any self-service. So if you have a soda machine that is available for customer self-service, you'll have to discontinue that practice and have it either moved behind your counter, that would be ideal, or just all drinks would have to be served by an employee. So some type of prevention from folks actually coming right up to the machine is ideal. At the very least, you would have to have it served by an employee. But again, it's just trying to keep these foods and beverages from being contaminated by anyone and everyone.
So multiple people, pushing the buttons and all of that. Can you explain why bars, what it is about bars and breweries that made it so the answer was no until you combined with a food facility? What's the natural nature of bars that you're seeing some complaints about that you want to make sure people understand this is why bars weren't allowed to be open?
Yeah, I think just the nature of a bar doesn't lend well to sit down only, number one, and preventing congregation and intermingling. It's kind of the nature of the beast with a bar. And so the language that came out of the original order was just that it's just one of the riskier things. Just not close behind would be, movie theaters and bowling alleys and things of that nature. And so they carry more risk of you as a business owner having little to no control once those folks are in your establishment to, handle the social distancing piece.
So, it's not natural to go to a bar, sit in your group, sit at that table only necessarily, especially since these are facilities that don't have food service to start out with.
Right.
Let's say they partner with a food truck, and I get this email a lot. They partner with a food truck or caterer or restaurant. Whose responsibility at that point is it to make sure that that they're following social distancing, that they're following the mask orders? Is it the bar or is it the food truck?
I think it comes down to who owns the facility. And so it's your space, you are the bar, it is your liability. If that food truck is out on the street, it's the food truck. So if folks are coming up to the food truck window, that is going to be their responsibility for their line and how they're distancing folks while they're waiting. But if then the intent is that they take the food back indoors or, you know, to the patio of this bar, then my inclination here would be that it would be on the bar. But it does get sticky. There's no doubt, and that's where this partnership comes in. And so I'm always going to point to business owners to contact their legal advice and kind of work those details out.
Mm-hmm. And if you do not have a lawyer and you're uncertain, you know, and you can't afford one or don't have a lawyer on staff, there are some organizations locally trying to create some access to legal resources. So you can reach out to me and I can try to point you in that direction. We've gotten that feedback from these sessions. One more question about bars. So, you know, people are eating now at the bars and they're, you know, getting food, drinks from the bars. They can't have people sitting at the bars then, right? They have to be seated at tables.
Correct. And so that is one of the details that when we point towards that variance procedure and that variance that is in the works, those are things that we want to really look at. But as of right now, under this safer at home order, it does not allow for, even if your bar is 400 feet long and you have a bartender that is on one end and you have folks on the other end, it does not allow for anyone to sit at that bar. So that's where we're at, and that's the kind of stuff that has sparked variance requests coming into our office, and then that's why we're trying to create some kind of uniform variance procedure.
So you bring up the term variance. So Jesse, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Not everybody understands what a variance is and the process you have to go through and the timeline it would take once the application's complete. Can you give a little bit of sense on that?
Sure. So the purpose of the variance is really, I mean, it really is asked from the county, from Boulder County Public Health, really, to, based on evidence that we have, that we can safely vary our practices from whatever the public health order is from the state. And there isn't really a set process, you know, driven by the state on how that's done. But we can, so that's what we're trying to develop right now, is the best way to get as much feedback as possible so that we can craft a variance that we would then send to the state, making a case that we can operate under alternative conditions, basically, from what the public health order is. And in terms of timeline, you know, I've heard numbers. Maybe Lane, you have some idea of what the exact timeline that the state takes, but I think it does vary depending on the size and complexity of the variance.
Yeah, just to speak generally, so the variance, each business doesn't request a variance. So we are going to request a variance of the state regulation. So we do want to create a mechanism to make sure we've thought through all the nuances, but our intention is not to go through all the components of the state order and look for all the issues that we want to get exception to. And it's really almost creating our own order is a better way of thinking of it, where we're addressing all the public health issues across all sectors instead of keeping all these various sectors independent, where we've run afoul with a lot of the way the state orders have come out is this sector is being treated differently than this one, even though the activities in most people's mind look the same. So we aren't going to look for everyone to start crafting all the variance needs you have and sending them for your individual variance requests. But what we will do is create an online mechanism so that we make sure all the issues that people are being concerned about are addressed in this big blanket approach that we take. So we don't want you to use our call center or the COVID business email. You know, that's going to flood us and bog us down. So it will really impede our ability to do this quickly. That being said, we'll create a new online forum that's just focused on that. So we have a big summary of all the issues that we can quickly sort through. It won't be a feedback mechanism where we get back to each person. Again, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. But the variances is really our county commissioners requesting that we can be less stringent than the state requirement. And we will justify the rationale why.
So once we get that form of some sort that people can give information, what type of information do you want from them? How they can safely practice at maybe higher, or what kind of information will you want from people?
We're simply going to want to know the issue that they're struggling with, that the current order either does not allow them to do or is too restrictive on the number of people, or again, whatever it's impeding their business from making it viable. You know, we know back to personal services, a different sector, initially they could only have 4 total people, including the instructors, to provide sessions. That might not be economically viable for them to do. You know, they might have to charge each person an exorbitant amount versus if they had classes of 20 or 30 or 40. So really just what is the issue? We don't want them to put in place all the practices that they're going to do. We're going to prescribe that still. So you're basically going to see a new order, if you will, from Boulder County saying, in order to be a business of any kind, you need to do these things. And it's really the things that we've already been working with people to do: social distancing, masks, screening your employees for their illness, hand washing, having access to signage, restricting your occupancy so you can maintain that social distancing, but it won't hopefully have prescriptive numbers. So it won't be a lot different, but yet it will be radically easier for people to manage. And it'll get into all those issues John was bringing up of, well, what if I do this and that related to this event? So it's going to address, I think, all of our issues across all sectors.
Yeah, we have a lot of event planners and event facilities on these calls. This is particularly the events one, and caterers.
Yeah. So,
you know,
yeah, we expect to be able to address all those. That being said, there are some caveats now that we can address some of these issues, as John talked about. You know, events that are outdoors have more flexibility, but you have to still manage all those same issues of how are people coming and going, you know, that you're minimizing that social interaction between people. So you have a lot of logistics to manage, but we have more freedom in what that ultimate number would be as long as you can manage all those risks.
Okay, so John, speaking of events, you know, we have a lot of caterers and event facilities who saw optimism with the restaurant orders. Are they able to operate like a restaurant?
No. Receptions are explicitly called out in the latest Safer Home Order as a prohibited, you know, if there's more than 10 people, it's a prohibited gathering. They are not to operate as restaurants.
Indoor and outdoor?
Indoor and outdoor, that's correct.
But this would be something that people can say is something that's inhibiting their business when you send out the form for
that's correct.
Feedback for variance.
We've definitely heard from a large number of event organizers already, not event organizers, venue managers, and folks in the event industry, that this is you know, a hindrance to their business. But until that variance is requested for and approved by the state, we have to defer to the state's current guidance.
So also on this call is Marianne Mahoney. She is the executive director of the Boulder Convention and Visitors Bureau. And Marianne was telling me a little bit about a conversation with the governor with the events industry. And I think it'd be interesting to highlight, you know, some of the, just that conversation and, you know, the governor listening to the events, specifically the events industry and hotel industry.
It was organized, thanks, Corinne. It was organized by the Colorado Hotel Lodging Association, and I shared with Zach, the other Zach, a few weeks ago of some documentation from the National Hotel Association as to how the best use of spaces and diagrams and really how to safely function, and hoping that that this could be some guidelines of the state. During the call, the governor was also somebody from the state health department, and I apologize for not writing her name down, kind of explaining on the health department side what resources in the outbreak, and if something happens in groups, kind of how that can spread and kind of the formulas that you all work from. But also looking at, and I think it's some things that the restaurants were talking about too, is instead of a flat number of people, allowing it by square footage. So then you could scale up or you scale down instead of the number. And I think you all have heard from our industry people that that's probably a solution. But again, it was all over the board, from large properties that are not in Boulder County, like the Gaylord Hotel, which, you know, you could probably put all our hotels in the county in this one hotel. The Broadmoor, and some downtown Denver hotels. But the governor was very receptive and listening and understanding, like the people on this call, some assurances that maybe in July or August or September, we could start booking these pieces of business, because the orders that are in place right now don't allow us, and planners won't be able to plan ahead. And a lot of events that we're talking about take an inordinate amount of planning. And so to have the governor and the health department kind of understand that, and there was a caveat. The governor said, you know, we might be able to say this, but if an outbreak happens, then it will be closed down. And everybody on the call absolutely understands that, because we want our customers to be safe, we want our staff to be safe, and we want our county and our state to be safe. So everybody was in agreement of that. So I just thought it was very, very encouraging during that call. But there's a long process still of the state health department, as the county, are looking at this to figure out how we can do this in our own county, in our own state, to have some business assurance as we move forward.
And the reason I had you bring this up is just to talk about the dialogues happening across the state and at different levels, and that business feedback is being encouraged at a lot of levels. And just like with restaurant, the feedback on the guidelines before they went out, or gyms last week, we understand this is a tough period and that every business operates differently. I know the health department gets a lot of like, this is how we could do it safely, let me do it. I get a lot of those as well. I get a lot of calls. And, you know, I know that at the heart of most businesses in the area, they want to keep their employees and customers safe. So we need just continue to promote that and to have the dialogue.
Well, there was also during that call with the governor, because some large hotels have transportation, they have their vehicles. So it crossed over to, you know, having 4 people on a bus from the Broadmoor up to Seven Falls. And so all of these, again, looking at the number, looking at capacities and square footage or total bus size versus the number of people. So I think keeping the dialogue going and understanding, and again, we don't want to make assurances that we can't keep, but knowing, and I think our country knows that, yes, we have to make sure things are safe.
Speaking of numbers, either Jesse or Lane, can you talk about Boulder County's numbers and how we're looking? Because I did get a question about that. Oh, you're Lane, you're on mute.
Related to our disease surveillance.
Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely in a very good place. So that's what puts us in a good position to make this variance request. So we're seeing sustained low incidence of new cases. Our hospitalization rates are also relatively low and sustaining that. We do see some disparities within our community. We see much higher incidence in Longmont. We're seeing disparities amongst our Latinx community. So we have additional efforts to try to figure out how we can further impact that. But again, overall, we're seeing that Boulder County and the residents there are doing a good job. So that has enabled us to continue to move forward, and we want to see that success continue. So it is really important as we continue to push forward, especially with our broad variance requests, it will be imperative that people really do keep that social distancing and wearing masks as part of all the different sectors that they're interacting with. Because if people become lax, that trend will not likely stay there, and eventually it could get us to a place where we're having to put more restrictive things in place. So we really need that success to continue.
Thank you. And for those of you that are listening, you're seeing that I'm launching a couple polls for you about some additional resources that or topics you'd like to talk about on future webinars. The clear winner was updates to the order and probably updates with potential variants. I'll send all this information to you, Jesse. And then the last question is, what resources that have been provided have you used or plan to use? Because a lot of these resources, like the checklists and the quarantining of products guidance or the special events guidance, those have been created by Boulder County Public Health as an easier tool for you than in some cases the state order and state issue. And so they want to see how much it's being used, because it's a lot of work to keep updated. So we're just gauging your information on that. Do any of you have any last minute thoughts or questions as we finish off this webinar? Oh, there's a question as to whether you've already sent a variance request or are you just waiting to do so. And I think so, maybe just clarify that.
Yeah, the variance hasn't been submitted yet. We're in the process of crafting it. I've written out an outline for our directors, but we have a lot of steps. The commissioners have to be briefed and they have to vote in support of it. We have to get all of the hospital CEOs to support it. And then it has to go down to the state for their review, which we're understanding is at least potentially a 2-week turnaround time. So we're still a ways off. That being said, there are certain changes that came out in the last week that have freed up and given more flexibility with numbers for certain things. So again, those life events specifically that are outdoors. So we have again, more support there, and John will be drafting and we'll be finalizing what that guidance looks like. We do have a space calculator on our website now to give people an idea of what potentially their space might be able to accommodate. And then obviously they still need to think about other logistics of where do people park, how do they come and go from your event, so that you still are addressing social distancing through all phases. But we do have some of those resources to help people start planning under the provisions that have come out now that give some more flexibility.
Okay. Well, once you guys develop the mechanism for feedback or the whatever link it is, we will send out to the entire group. There will be a recording of this webinar. Thank you for answering all 3 questions to the polls. Looks like all the resources are very valuable to businesses. And let's hope that we can get the feedback in a timely manner so that you guys can move forward with a potential variance. We appreciate you looking at a variance. I know that especially with the last revision of the state order, there more inconsistencies were pointed out. So appreciate that, and appreciate you continuing to have these office hours. I know once that goes in place, there will be some changes that we'll need to communicate on these webinars. In the meantime, I will send out a follow-up email. There is the call center for particular questions, but we will be providing a different place for you to provide variance feedback so you're not overwhelming the call center at this time. Thank you to the 7 panelists today for joining us, and we'll see everybody next week, same time, 1 o'clock.
Thanks, Corinne.